We're absolutely delighted to have you all with us today as we enter this space for the keynote presentation for our 2026 QEW Spring Gathering with Jacob Johns on spirit-filled activism. Jacob, who is with us in the call right now, is an Akimel O'odham and Hopi activist, multidisciplinary artist, public speaker, um, environmental systems strategist, working at the intersection of global environmental issues, policy, culture, and indigenous-based concerns. And he's also the head of the Wisdom Keepers Collective. And I don't know if Jacob himself identifies as a wisdom keeper. I haven't heard him to use that title for himself, but I certainly feel that way towards him. It's been an honor in the past few weeks and months to work with Jacob as we gather together for this time and to consider what message is most needed for our communities as we traverse this extraordinary time between worlds, between one world and the next. And it's with that I want to name that Jacob is bringing, I think, just an extraordinary ministry through his life and his work. From many of us here who's been here for the whole session know that Jacob, as a water protector and as an indigenous activist, was pepper sprayed, was had dogs set on him in North Dakota, and was shot in New Mexico, and survived that shooting and had Quakers and others praying outside of his hospital as he recovered from that time. And it's a specific thing that Jacob shared, and I think some of us heard last night, that in that moment there was a spiritual death that Jacob experienced, and in coming back to this life and in this time, in his own words, there's there are responsibilities that the spirits have laid upon Jacob, and this calling to unite humanity, this responsibility to unite humanity in the face of what we're all sharing, and to be of service to the planet and the whole of life, I think is just pervasive in everything Jacob does. So it was an absolute honor. Jacob and I met at the United Nations Conference of the Parties, COP30, in the Amazon last year. And I just was electrified by everything he had to say. And afterwards, we shook hands, and I invited him. I said, "You have to come speak for us here at Quaker Earthcare Witness." And so this is really the culmination of the beginning of that story. And we're just delighted to be bringing you in, Jacob, at this time. So I'll say one more thing before I hand it over to you. For those of you who might be new to this space, who are new to Quaker Earthcare Witness, new to our group here, QEW, Quaker Earthcare Witness, is a North American-based international community of friends called to act with courage and spiritual depth in the face of the climate and biodiversity crisis. We work to inspire spirit-led action for ecological justice, right relationship, and an earth restored. At QEW, we feel called to act with the same boldness and urgency and moral clarity that these urgent times demand. We believe humanity is crossing a threshold, spiritually, ecologically, and morally, and that the choices made in the years ahead will shape the fate of generations. In the face of ecological breakdown, deep inequality, and rising violence, we hear a clear leading to help us guide the human family towards a future rooted in humility, courage, justice, and a kinship with light. I would like to welcome all of you at this point to greet Jacob as he guides us into this next step of our journey this weekend.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. It's really good to see all of your faces. And it was an honor to hear Keith come in and ask me to come and do this, and I'm really honored to sit here with you this day and speak with you. I'd like to invite you all to just get in a relaxed position if you're willing and able to just get into a meditative space. I want to guide you through a spiritual practice called Hilta. Hilta is a practice we do in the morning time traditionally from the Hopi tradition, is where we sit facing the sun and we envision the sunlight coming down and breathing in the light in order to charge our bodies as we go out to do the work that we're supposed to do in the world. And I'd like to invite you all to just get in a relaxed position wherever you are at, sitting, just feel comfortable. Go ahead and just loosen yourself up and close your eyes. I'd like for you all to just take a deep breath. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Take another deep breath in, a deep breath out. Let's do another one with deep breath in and a deep breath out. Now imagine that you're sitting in the darkness, facing east, and the sun is rising. And as you take a deep breath in, you can feel the sun start to rise higher in the sky. And the first break of dawn, a light touches the crown of your head, and you breathe it in with your inhale. And you exhale out darkness, the stress, the worry, all of the darkness that is trapped in your body. It's the divine exchange for the new day. And as the sun rises higher, the sunlight goes further and further down from the crown of your head, down into your eyes, past your nose, down into your chin. And I invite you to breathe the light in that is given to us from the divine creation and exchange it with the darkness that is trapped inside of our body. As we inhale in, we bring the light from the new dawn into our bodies, and we exhale out all of the darkness and stress. Imagine that each inhale brings the light further and further down as the sun rises into the sky. You pull that light into your body, and you exchange all that is not light, that is trapped in your physical space. You blow it out. As the sun starts to rise higher and higher in the sky, it starts to fill up your body more and more with your inhales as you intentionally draw the light that is given to us by creation into our bodies, and we exchange it with darkness. Imagine that the darkness that you exhale is smoke. It is yuck, it is stress, it is worry, it is all of the things that are not divine light that are contained in our body, and we blow it out. Continue to feel the sunlight fill up your body as it draws down further and further down into your neck, down into your shoulders, further down into your torso, and it's filling up with each inhale divine light given to you by creation. And we exhale the stress. All of the darkness that is trapped in our bodies, as we pull the light further and further down into our torsos, down into our abdomen, down into our hips, pulling out all of the darkness, all of the fear, all of the trauma that is trapped physically in our body, we blow it out. The sun continues to rise higher and higher in the sky, and you continue to breathe the light as you're sitting in your comfortable position, feeling the warmth of the new day filling up your body, pulling it down past your hips, down into your thighs, down into your knees, pulling out all that is heavy, all that is weighing you down, all of that no longer serves you. You exhale it and blow it out like smoke. As the sun rises higher and higher in the sky, you continue to breathe the light down into your body, past your knees, down into your ankles, down into your feet, and finally out the tips of your toes. You pull in the light and you breathe it in. I invite you to feel the divine light as your body is completely filled with pure light that was given to us by creation. Feel your body warm and full and glowing with the divine light given to us by creation. Feel your body glowing with the divine light that is given to you by creation. And as you feel your body emanating with divine light given to you by creation, imagine that your body slowly starts to dissolve until you are just left with one glowing sphere of consciousness. Imagine yourself emanating this divine light given to you by creation. And where the top of your head used to be becomes the North Pole. And where the base of your spine used to be becomes the South Pole.
Hey, honey, you want to do this little meditation?
And the South Pole becomes your spine. And in the middle of the planet, in the divine light, is your heart. Feel your heart being connected to the center of the planet. And at this space in the core of your being, at the center of the planet, you connect in your mind and you expand light. As you breathe in divine light given to you by creation, will view as the sun. It casts shadow across the planet and giving us a new day. And we breathe in the light, now for the entire planet. Imagine the light coming down from the northern hemisphere, from the North Pole, going down to the northern hemisphere, down towards the equatorial region, and finally down towards the South Pole, filling the entire world with divine light given to you by creation. Feel the new day coming across the entire planetary consciousness as you breathe in the light given to you by divine creation. And at the center of the planet lies you. Center of the planet, the center of the sphere of consciousness lies you. And at the core of your being, there's the divine spark, the same heat, the same warmth, the same intensity of brightness that is given to you by divine creation from an outside source is now being recognized within your soul. At the core of your being is the divine spark that is given to you by creation. And you must expand it and focus on the same heat and the same light now being exuded out from your heart, from the center of the planet, and radiating from the core of your being. Feel your heart emanating this divine light and recognizing the power that you have. Feel yourself as the earth, healing yourself. And this divine light at the core of your being is radiating, it is beaming, it is emanating. And you switch from absorbing outside energies and outside forces and recognizing the truth that you are divine light, that you are the planet healing itself. And this emanation continues to happen. And it is a sound, and it is a frequency, and it is beautiful. Now feel the core of your planet, the core of your being, the core of your soul, emanating, moving, and up and out and all around, so that the entire planet is feeling this radiating divine energy that was given to you by creation. Take a deep breath in of light. Exhale a deep breath of light. Take a deep breath of light. Exhale, deep breath of light. As you inhale and you exhale, feel yourself as the earth, radiating divine energy given to you by creation, emanating from the core of your being, which is simultaneously connected to the center of the planet. And you just are. I invite you to slowly open your eyes when you're ready and you're willing and you're able. And come back to this digital group, this digital room where we're all in. This idea of recognizing your own power and your own light and exchanging the darkness that is trapped into us, that is forced upon us by all of the things. It's an important step for us to break free from the paradigms that were forced upon us. A little bit about me is when I was 17, my little brother had killed himself. I found him in the closet with a noose around his neck, and I tried to bring him back to life. My older brother was there as well, and we both tried to give him CPR, but it didn't work, and he ended up dying. And for the longest time, I couldn't look in mirrors because all I could see was his dead face, because we looked so similar in reflection. And it was really hard for me at the moment because I couldn't look at myself. Every single time I saw my own eyes, I saw a dead body of my little brother, and it was really, really difficult for me. And it was a really, really hard thing to deal with that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And dealing with death was so intense that I wanted to forget. And so I started to drink and started to drugs and I wanted to die, but in no way could I kill myself and leave my family with another gaping hole. And I ended up going to prison for 8 years for assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon. And so when I was 19, I was put in maximum security prison. And, I had 8 years that I was sentenced to for a class 2 dangerous felony. And I was 19 at the time, and I weighed like 105 pounds. And here I am, this shriveled little thing going into maximum security prison. And I was devastated. 8 years is a long time. It's a lot more longer time if you're 19 years old. There's a big difference between that. And so here I am in maximum security prison, and it's like old school bars. It's like the ones clink, 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 and people got the mirrors, and it's like this old school like maximum security prison. And I get in there, and I'm really depressed because I've got to do 8 years at 19 and all this, and people start asking me questions, and they're like, "How much time you got?" And I was like, "Well, I got 8 years." And everybody started laughing at me. They were telling me that I was a short timer, that 8 years is nothing, and that they're doing multiple life sentences, and they've done all these things, and they got this crazy amount of time, and this whole idea of me coming from county jail into prison for 8 years was in maximum security was massively devastating. And here I was in the place getting laughed at for being a short timer at 8 years for 8 years. And so, for spending that much time in prison was difficult. I had a daughter at the time, and my daughter ended up dying. And nobody wanted to tell me that my daughter had died because they were afraid I was going to kill myself when I was incarcerated. And so for like 6 months, almost a year, nobody would acknowledge what took place until finally they broke it down to me. And when you find out that your child has died, when you're still looking at this much prison time, it's really devastating. It was really hard. And, I didn't have a whole lot to work with. I was slammed down in a maximum security prison with nothing. I had no food, I had no TV, I had nothing. And I was forced to deal with all of the trauma that had led me to that place in my life. And so I began to meditate. There was nothing else to do. I don't have TV, I don't have book, I don't have nothing in there. And so I would meditate, and I continued to meditate. Every time I had nothing to do, I would sit down on the ground, I'd quiet my mind, and I would try to listen to what the universe was offering me in those moments. Especially if I was dark and I was having a dark time, I would go back and I would sit on the floor as soon as I wake up, and I would meditate for an hour. And this practice is difficult. I don't know if you all have a heavy meditation practice, but if trying to quiet your mind and not think anything is almost impossible. And when people try to give you tips on how to do it, it makes it worse. And it's like there's different levels of it, and trying to visualize this stuff. It's like, you hear all these gurus talking about just quiet your mind and Om and lets you do it this way, and there's only specific ways. But the truth was for me that I had a really hard time dealing with all of the trauma that had led me there. And it was only through internal inflection and reflection that I was able to focus on like what comes next. Because I had this perspective that everything was at the end. But when I got to that place that was supposed to be the end, they laughed at me and told me that it was just the beginning. And this idea of us finding new ways to break free from the paradigms that are destructive for us have to start personally. And so for 8 years, I ended up in maximum security prison. I continued to meditate. I meditated every day. And one of the main things that really helped me was to do this practice of Hilta. The Hilta is very important. We can do it physically, right? Like I invite you all, if you ever wake up before the sun, to sit facing the sunrise and do this practice as it was meant to be. But also, you don't need to sit facing the sun. You don't need to be in the earth. You don't even need to be facing east. The truth is that we have all that we need in our minds if we're able to really focus on all of the the intention of healing that is necessary for us to evolve. And meditation was meditation really helped me a lot. But the hilta in starting to envision yourself as being white and being coded really helps to chase off negative energies. Whenever I'm super depressed or I'm spiraling or I'm having these negative thoughts or intrusive, awful things, I really try to reconnect myself and realize that, hey, I'm not aligned and I need to quiet my mind. And so this spiritual practice of being able to do this eventually led to more and more different levels where you're doing all of these wonderful things, but internally, and you don't have to share it with anyone. And this idea of us being able to find our own path to enlightenment or truth or creation, whatever it is you want to define these terms, it has to start in your heart, and it has to start with you intentionally sitting down to expand and to grow and to evolve. So after 7 years, almost 7 years and 10 months, almost 8 years, I was released at 27 years old, and I moved to Spokane, Washington. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And Phoenix, Arizona, it's not a very friendly place, but my mom was willing to host me, and I moved to Spokane, Washington, where I had felt like basically a battery that had been overcharged. You're sitting there meditating for 8 years, thinking about how you're going to do a good thing in the world. You better follow through with those plans, otherwise the universe will slap your wrist and throw you back in prison again. This is just the way things are with the universe, I believe. That we are always led to different places to find, to grow. That there's never a dead end. There's always another way for us to evolve, to grow, and to blossom. And it's our responsibility to quiet our minds and listen to the universe and have our own internal dialogue guide us to what our destiny is meant to be. And this idea of us, being able to charge our bodies, but more importantly, take the responsibility on for the entire planetary consciousness, that eventually we will evolve past this idea of us being a separate single entity and a soul, but understand that we are entirely a planetary consciousness that is intricately interwoven as one person is with their past. And, this idea of being able to charge yourself becomes selfish. This idea of ego and all this, like I know that I need to do self-care right now, but also like the world needs caring. And that if we make the connection of unity and unity consciousness, then it becomes a spiritual obligation. If we don't wake up in the morning and we don't envision the earth broadcasting new energy that only certain people will be able to hear, then we failed ourselves as being something that we're not supposed to be. So after I got out, I started volunteering. I was volunteering all the time. I was doing all kinds of stuff. All kinds of campaigns. What am I going to do? I'm just here. I'm here to help, And so I continued to work on all these campaigns, volunteering all the time. Eventually, I got hired on. I needed to pay bills. Like I got to do stuff I still got to feed kids. I got to feed people. And so I started applying for different jobs. And I got hired on for a campaign here in Washington State, where I continued to work for political action committees that were aligned with the Democratic Party. And it was mainly like, ballot initiatives. So I wasn't working for like a physical person to be a candidate to take office, but really working to change policies and laws that would be, basically you'd have to write another law to make that law obsolete, right? So we want to make sure that we're working within this space. And I believe in laws that we can, and policies that we can pass that will help the society and, hopefully create templates for others to follow suit. But this idea of us being able to learn how to organize from political action committees gave me a different perspective than doing street organizing and doing direct actions and all of this stuff. It really gives me a background to do all these things. And in 2016, about 6 years after I was out of prison, I was working on this campaign, and we were being successful, like really successful. And they gave us like 2 weeks off. Right, 2 weeks off. And so I was like, they're like, it was paid. And I was like, what am I gonna do? Everybody's like, I'm gonna go to Maui, I'm gonna go snowing or snow skiing in Wyoming, and all this stuff. They're like, Jacob, what are you gonna do? I was like, I'm gonna go to North Dakota. And they're like, what are you gonna do in North Dakota? I was like, they got this thing going on. And so I went over there to Standing Rock, initially because I had a week off of paid vacation. Like, what am I gonna do with it? So I drove out to North Dakota, and while I was there, I went with a friend of mine, and it was the way that it was in the beginning, where there's a lot of indigenous tribes coming through, and it was like all about prayer. And so we went there, and I was trying to sleep in my tent, and I heard this noise, and it was a drum beat, and it was specific drum beats from the Southwest. And so I woke up, I got all excited, and the next day we went down to go do this water ceremony down at the construction site, and they were boys from Arizona, right? Like I was like, all right, it feels like I'm home here, let's go. We went down to do a prayer at the original construction site, and there was an injunction that was in place. And the injunction was preventing the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline because where the proposed path was going was actually going to cross cultural significant sites. And what these culturally significant sites were the graves of over 100 women and children who were killed by the American government as they were encroaching on their land. And this pipeline was coming to come in, dig up the graves, and put a pipeline that go underneath the Missouri River. And so we put an injunction in. And when we went down to do the prayer gathering, we realized that they were still doing construction. So we all went down and did a direct action. And this is when they let the dogs loose on us. It just so happened that the Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! Was there and videotaped the whole thing. And this video went wild. It was like 13 million views in like a week or so. I mean, it was crazy. It was 2016, and here I am. Hi, I'm Jacob Johns. My zip code is this, and my social security number is that. And so, like, they put a warrant out for my arrest, and they did all this stuff, and people really saw like all the stuff that was taking place. I came back to Spokane, and I ended up doing an online fundraiser, like a crowdsourcing thing, and I raised like $5,000 in a week. Then I went back to Standing Rock. We delivered all these supplies, and I worked with the tribe to get a letter, and we brought it back to city council, and like we did all these things for Standing Rock. It's snowballed to all this stuff until eventually, like our campaign was over, and the next thing I knew, we were in the Westin at the Seattle Westin, and it's a hotel, and all the Democratic campaigns are there. And we're celebrating because we won, but everybody is in the hallways crying and like literally consoling each other because Donald Trump had just become president. And so after everybody, I mean, I don't believe in candidates, I've like, I'll work in political stuff, but whatever. And so I thought for sure this is just some sort of hoax, or it was a miscount or something like this. No way this person could have been our president. And sure enough, the next day it was solidified. And so that sparked me from not considering to go and work for political action committees, but to go down and become a community supported organizer. And so a community supported organizer was basically a program that was giving activists a platform to receive nonprofit status and continue to do the work in order to pay their cost of living. So I went down to Vashon Island in Washington State and met with the Backbone Campaign, and they signed me on to be a community supported organizer. So for the next 10 years, almost 10 years, 9.5 years, I was a community supported organizer. And I did a wide variety of things all over, and as community supported organizer, I'm just one person. And here I am trying to convince all these people like, hey, listen, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that. And like, it was too much. Whenever I would tell people what I was going to do, there was always issues. So I stopped doing that, and I just started doing things and telling people what was done. And that was like really helpful for me because you sitting around with boards and you're doing all this other stuff. For those of us who work in nonprofits, it's like it's a prison industrial complex. It really is. And so being able to step away from that and being like a solo activist that had fiscal sponsorship, was able to do all the stuff, and my funders contributed to my cost of living, which is a very small amount of money, but it did help me cover like some bills. And so for 10 years, I continued to do that along with doing work and portrait work and doing other artistic things that were given to me after spending 8 years in prison. And I started to do all this stuff. Well, eventually it brought me into the UNFCCC. So I started to do things with the U.S. Climate Action Network, and then there was an opportunity for members of the network to attend the United Nations Conference of the Parties. So the UNFCCC is actually where I met Keith at the Conference of the Parties, which is also short for the COP. This was the 30th year it was taking place where I met Keith. But 6 years ago, that was my 5th COP, I'd never heard of it before, right? Like a lot of Americans don't, what is this? The COP? Whenever I talk about the COP, Americans get nervous the police are gonna come. What is it? What? And so this idea of us like coming here and like learning about how important this is globally, that it made a lot more sense for me to figure out like what was going on and, maybe try to explain it to people, especially as best as I could. And so I ended up going to Glasgow. And when I was in Glasgow for COP 20 something, I forget what it is, I ended up doing a video series. And the whole point of me going as a solo person was to video people and then explain to people in a video form the intricacies of the UNFCCC. And more importantly, why it's important for Americans to pay attention to what's taking place. And so that was like something I really wanted to bring up. And I want to show you this video here from A Code Red for Humanity.
And so I started to cry.
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Apologies. I'm my own tech person today, so forgive me. Let's see, share. Here we go.
In the year 1992, the United Nations held an Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. The summit allowed the United Nations to adopt a framework aimed at preventing, quote, dangerous climate change. This legally binding agreement, known as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC, was signed by 197 countries worldwide. Each year, countries submit their nationally determined contributions to the United Nations framework as their countries plan to achieve the required goals. Negotiators come together to discuss the terms of the agreement at what is called the Conference of the Parties. The COP, as it is also known, is attended by countries that signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. In 2015, attendees signed on to the Paris Agreement, setting the global temperature rise limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Paris Agreement, as it was called, meant that countries have to keep cutting emissions until they hit net zero by 2050. We are now currently at 1.2 degrees in total global temperature rise, with new models predicting that we're actually on track to hit 1.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2030. And why is 1.5 a very important number? Why should we care at all? Global glacier melt accompanied by extreme droughts, global crop failure, sea level will rise accompanied by island nations being completely wiped off the map, the entire ocean becoming acidic and no longer able to support life. The entire equatorial region becomes uninhabitable. Society as we know it will fail. Systems that support life will fail. But we have the ability to stop some of it. We can mitigate that very possible future now. We are a part of the earth. There is no separation. And we must listen to ourselves and continue to replenish our spirits with hope and strength. And we have seen world leaders fail us over and over again, and yet we still continue to put faith in these systems that continue to destroy. Our societies must realize that the public interest is a global concern, and humanity will move forward together, leaning on ourselves for guidance.
Let us stand.
So I won't go into all of that, but this is just to give you a real quick snippet of what it was I was doing as one person. I mean, when you learn about the intricacies of the UNFCCC, it's like a crazy amount of stuff. Like there's levels upon levels and layers upon layers. They're like ogres. They got so many layers. It's crazy. And so, trying to explain that in a TLDR version, a too long didn't read version of all these intricate stuff, it's really like, let's get to the meat of it and understand why it's important. And more importantly, why as American citizens, it is important for us to use our voices and free speech in these international spaces where there are people who are advocating supposedly on our behalf, but are not doing so. And so here I was and walking around Glasgow, I'm looking for people to interview, right? I'm looking at all this stuff, and I found this guy. I kept seeing this guy, and he was like this beautiful flower of a human being. He was walking by. He was like wearing a dashiki, and he was like, this big thing. It was this really cool guy. So I ended up asking him, hey, will you give me an interview? And so he started speaking, and he was saying all these like amazing, eloquent things, and like all this like, yes, like let's go. Like I just wanted to eat it up with a spoon. What he was saying was so nourishing. And so I was so excited after I got home. I was going to go home. We exchanged information. I was going to go home. I was going to take his interview, and I was going to put it's like a cherry on top of this wonderful thing. And I forgot to put on the microphone. And so whatever he had said, it was lost into the ether and it was gone forever. And I was like, all right, whatever. You know, I saw him. He still looked great. He still looked like a beautiful flower of a human being. But whatever he was speaking was goss. And I felt it. I felt it. And so I came home and I was really, really jet lagged. And for those of us who travel a lot, like jet lag is just like perpetually there. Especially if you travel all the time. Internationally, it's the worst. People are always like, oh, it's so fun. It's like, no, it's actually the worst because you're an insomniac all the time and you're trying to function on zero sleep. So here I am back in Spokane, Washington, coming back from Glasgow, and I was up. I was just up, and you know, as a reference to prison, whenever I wake up, no matter, especially if it's a repeating number, especially repeating time. If it's a repeating time, like get up. The universe is trying to tell you things. Like the early morning has secrets to tell you if you're willing to listen. And so if it's a repetitive thing, you know, over and over and over again, you pay attention to it because the universe is trying to show you something, or trying to teach you something, or trying to get you to understand, and you know, this idea of being able to wake up whatever time you're going to wake up and do the Hilta. Practice breathing in light. Imagine yourself as the earth healing itself. Imagine yourself doing all this thing. Because at that moments in time, especially if it's really, really early, like there's no one else around. And the stillness of the quiet morning has wonderful secrets to tell you. And so I'll show you this.
And so I started to cry, and I would meditate, and my deep breaths, they would just become yawns. And then those yawns would become tears until I was full-on ugly-ass crying. I cried out of beauty and out of rage, and I cried for pain and inspiration in pure, utter thankfulness. I cried for the beauty of truth. I cried for a home that no longer exists. And I cried for a home that maybe never existed in this life. And I cried and yearning and wanting to feel complete in the present version of what I call myself. And in doing so, I started to be woken up around 3 a.m. I first noticed when I woke up at 3:33, and it just kept happening. And it's been going on for 6 months, and it's really fucking annoying. And so I wake up and start wondering why. Like, what's the purpose of this pattern? And so I close my eyes and I listen to the songs the early morning silence is trying to offer me. And while continuing this practice, I hear infinite songs, endless possibilities. And so I must pick which song resonates with my soul. I choose to listen to a song, a beautiful harmony that explained that I create a non-linear time space when I meditate. A future version of myself is there waiting to give me energy from the future construct, to give me healing energy when I meditate, along with warnings and guidance from my higher self. And so I've been waking up to receive this energy brought forth from the future in a way that was ushered in by quietly listening to the sun while it's still dark outside. And a future version of myself is on that non-linear time space to give me healing energy. And this beautiful song I was listening to, that song that I was emanating, told me that I can complete the circuit by thinking back on my past younger self, in times when I felt completely alone, in times when I had no one else in the world. That I must focus on my pain and sadness in the past and send myself loving energy from the linear year of 2021. I thought back as a baby and being left alone to cry myself to sleep, sending me healing energy where I am from now, letting myself know that it's gonna be okay. And the more I focused on giving, the more I received until I realized that there is no future version of myself, that time is a construct. And it's the two different versions of myself were only 2 points of consciousness being pulled from the infinite. This song told me that when I meditate, I am not creating a linear time space. I am letting go of the past and the future as constructs, and realizing that I am the non-linear time space in all reality. And the more that I live fearlessly and honestly and remain vulnerable and being guided from my heart, that I will embody the binding force of the universe and everything else will just melt away. Non-linear time space is the light. We are the ones who create the shadows.
So the main reasons that I wanted to do a video like that is because that's a lot of information to try to like, it's like, well, why were you doing that? It's like, yeah, well, actually just watch this video. Let's leave it at that. I'll surmise everything in 3 minutes and that's great. But this idea of meditation and like healing and listening, like it was something that continued to happen. And so here I was, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting in my living room floor and I'm in my underwear meditating, and I had this flash. So here I am, envisioning myself as the earth, and the earth. I felt as a sphere of consciousness that there was like a belt. It felt like a belt, right? Like I was this fat little baby and there's this belt. It was like something that needed to be connected around the belt in order to like be secure. I didn't know exactly what it meant. And that what I needed to do was to find a group of like-minded people who I could travel around the world with and go to these different places that were connection and pray for humanity. And so here I was like, all right, that sounds cool, whatever. And so I'm like, shake it off, whatever. I'm just go about my day. And then 4 hours later, I get a call from that man who I recorded and forgot to record the sound. And his name was Puven. And he asked me to join a group of people that traveled the world to pray for humanity at sacred sites. And so I told him, yeah, I'll go. But first off, I want to find out like how you guys are funded. Like, are you guys aliens? Like, what's the deal? And so I ended up driving from Washington down to Mount Shasta, and they were coming from Giza, and they were coming to Mount Shasta, and then they were going to Mauna Kea at this place. And so this idea of us, of them like coming to Mount Shasta, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot because first off, I was told to do this during meditation or whatever, and it's like a really freaky thing to happen. So I drove down 13 hours to California, and I met with these people at the base of Mount Shasta, and they were a unique group of people. But it began this, it established a trusting relationship where I was able to start traveling with these people. And so I ended up traveling, all around the world, basically, to different places to pray for humanity. And these places were, I can show you. These places are under this idea of a ley line, that there are intersecting energies around the planet. I didn't make this, but the person who facilitated the travel trip. So we went to Mount Shasta, and then I went to the Azores. After that, I went to Greenland. I actually went up to Greenland to do the North Pole, and then we went to Giza during COP28. Then I went down to Xi'an in China, over to Mount Kailash in Tibet, down to Uluru in Australia, and then over to New Zealand, north and south, to do ceremony for the South Pole. And it was a lot. Like, I think the first time that we did it, the second time we went on a trip, we took 27 flights in 45 days. And that's like a crazy amount of time. And so like we couldn't sleep. We just couldn't sleep. And then everything just becomes this big minutia of being awake. And that idea, it's like, it was a lot. It was a lot. But these group of people, they actually wanted to do more than just doing these sacred sites trips around the planet to pray for humanity, but to do more than that. And they were part of a collective called the Earthrise Collective. And the Earthrise Collective is based out of South Africa. The man who I forgot to record audioly is the executive director of that. Puven Moody is actually an international human rights lawyer based out of South Africa that used to be the ED of Natural Justice, but now is the executive director of the Earthrise Collective, which is where I came out of. So I did the media forum. We did a bunch of different stuff. I started working with them pretty hardcore to do stuff. And I can show you. So this is a little bit of something that happened in South Africa. Sorry, I'm not very tech savvy this morning. Forgive me. Here we go. Imagine light coming from the center of the earth and radiating out from the core of our planet so that all consciousness can feel this vibrational shift of truth, that we are one consciousness, that we are each other, that we are nature, and that we are the planet.
How do we find a way through the crisis we're in? And the only way we'll find our way through it is us doing it collectively and essentially creating some kind of energetic pathway so we can walk through the crisis, but also start to rebirth what needs to be birthed, because we can't continue on the old paradigms. And so I think that's where the Earthrise Collective has found its place.
The Earthrise Collective is a gathering, a collective, a convening, a community of Indigenous knowledge holders, of wisdom keepers, of artists, of scholars, of visionaries, of thought leaders, of activists who have come together seeking to merge these threads of activism, ancient wisdom, and alternatives. How would it happen if activism merged with ancient wisdom, merged with Indigenous knowledge systems? What would be the result?
I think there's a common story amongst all Indigenous peoples across the world around true and genuine Indigenous leadership to protect our biodiversity, to protect our country and the future for our kids. Because if everybody had the relationship with Mother Earth the way we do as First Nations people, I don't think we would have the destruction that we have. It very much comes back to relationships and respect. So call it activism or call it just caring.
How do we shift the way we see life? How do we shift the way we see the rest of nature? How do we engage very differently from the paradigms we've been taught? So I think that unlearning process and a rebirthing of a different way of being and trying new things, as many of the members of the collective are trying, whether it's with food systems, whether it's with energy systems. And I think the Earthrise Collective is finding some space to really tap into the ancient wisdom, to bring that wisdom forth, to share with humanity at this time.
Knowledge systems that maintained societies, that maintained the planet for millennia, have been stripped bare. It is important for Indigenous knowledge holders to come together so that we can remind each other of that which has been lost and catalyze within each other the memories of that which has been forgotten.
It has opened up relationships that have just deepened my awareness as to what's going on in other communities and discovering that we're sharing the same stories, the same issues. You know, if we can gather together and figure out a way to fight the battle of protecting Mother Earth.
An activism that is rooted in love, a way of being that we believe is generative in nature, and perhaps a way of being that is a midwife to the new world in which humanity is remembering that we're members of that one original instruction.
So when you go travel around the world with people and you pray at sacred sites and you basically go through some sort of universal initiation process, like it makes sense to like do something. Like we've traveled all around the world. We've prayed at all these places. Like y'all still trying to do something? Like what now? What you know what I mean? So after I had traveled around, we had met all these people. I mean, it was literally like It was an insane thing that took place that doesn't seem real. And so after I had made these connections with doing international work and traveling around and meeting all these wisdom keepers all around the planet and being in ceremony and knowing personally that I can validate these people are substantive and are not coming from an empty space, I asked these people to join a collective that was coming from the Earthrise Collective. I asked them to join a new group, a group that would help me to go to the UNFCCC and advocate from a global perspective of Indigenous wisdom keepers who would be able to come and pull their hearts and their minds together in order to create a future for our children that is healthy and just and livable, and doing this in a way that is going to amplify a traditional ecological knowledge, traditional wisdom in halls of power by the forces of colonization that are rampant around the world. And they agreed. And so here I was, all right, I've got all these people, I've got the people I really like, these are solid people, let's go do all this stuff. And we needed to raise money. The Conference of the Parties the year after Egypt, where we first initially went, was in Dubai. And for those of you who are familiar with the UAE, the Dubai is the most expensive city in the world. And it's not uncommon to see billionaires racing Ferraris down the freeway, right? Like that's the type of place that Dubai is. And this is where they were having the International Climate Conference, right? There's people, it's just the tickets alone, and then the housing. Like we had to, it was crazy. So, thinking about doing this and raising the money to bring these groups of people, at this moment, was just one person. I was just a community support organizer who tried to get all these people. These people agreed to do it, but we still had to come up with money to go to the most expensive city in the planet, right? Like, that's wild. And so, with some of my networks and contacts, I went down with the U.S. Climate Action Network with the West Coast Regional Gathering, which took place in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we were working with some local folks. We like to support local movement spaces. And, I'm Hopi and Akimel O'odham. I'm from Arizona, and so our relatives are in New Mexico. Our Pueblo relatives are in New Mexico, and they took us and asked us to on a tour and asked me to come to stand with them in a sacred prayer gathering, a prayer vigil. And so I said, all right, yeah, I'll totally come. So I went down, and there was a statue of a conquistador that they were trying to re-erect. It was this conquistador was a horrible person. Back in the 1500s, this Spanish conquistador was excommunicated from the Spanish army for war crimes in the Americas. And so this is actually during the time of the Spanish Inquisition, right? Like this is that time of frame. And he was tried and convicted, found guilty by the Spanish government for war crimes against the indigenous people. After they did an uprising, he ended up rounding up all of the Acoma people, all of the Acoma Pueblo people, and lining up over 800 men and cutting off their right foot. And it maimed an entire generation and did such devastating trauma to all these people. And here they were, had a statue erected of this horrible person in this place. And they had taken it down during the 2020 George Floyd uprising, and they were trying to illegally reinstall this statue once again to commemorate the genocide that was pushed upon the first people of that land by the Spanish. And there was some opposition that were there. In rural New Mexico, it's a strange place where Hispanic people separate themselves from any indigeneity and identify only with the white supremacy of conquistadorism, which is a strange dynamic to see Latinos and Hispanic people out there supporting fascist right-wing ideology. And so that was the first time I ever had it. And when we went out there, we had an all-night vigil. We stayed up there next to the place, and in the morning, somebody showed up. We were successful, actually. We had an all-night prayer vigil. The county commissioners decided not to put the thing up, and we were celebrating, and we were having a press conference, and some pro-conquistador activists or pro-conquistador people showed up, and one of them had a gun, and one of them tried to run into the middle where all of the women and children were at, and I was standing there and saw him, and he was running towards. I heard all this commotion, and somebody got on the microphone and said, can we get all the women and children to come to the center now in a hurried voice? And all these children who were there, and all the women started running to the center because this person was trying to run in. And I ran out to stop him, and he pulled out a gun and shot me in the chest. And it was a hollow point bullet. So when he shot my chest, it just turned into shrapnel inside my internal organs, and I couldn't breathe, and I blacked out. And I ended up dying. I couldn't breathe. I was screaming. I saw this. I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe, and my lungs had collapsed. The pieces of the bullet had gone through my lungs, collapsed my lungs, went through my stomach. They had to take portions of it out. They take portions of my liver out. My pancreas was damaged. It had portions of it had to be sewn together. And then there were tubes that were installed, and tubes inside of my liver. There was tubes that pieces went through my spleen, destroyed my spleen, and shrapnel still trapped all in my body, and I died. And I blacked out, and when I came to, I came to in the helicopter. And here I was, I blacked out, and I came to only to feel the wind of the helicopter, the heat and the coldness of the altitude slowly stop and become like a VHS tape where everything, if you remember, when you push pause, just sort of stays frozen. And reality itself frozen, and I died. And upon my death, I was sent to a council of spirits where I was able to examine everything that I had done in that life. Everything that I had ever made anyone feel, I was forced to feel myself as if it was me receiving the energy I put out. And over and over and over again, I had chosen service to others versus service to self. And I was trying to convince this council of spirits as we were reviewing my life, whenever there was something positive, I was able to pull that out and use it as collateral to come back into this body and to continue to be a father to my young daughter, who was very young at the time. And they agreed. You know, I don't know what your spiritual beliefs are or whatever you personally believe, but I can tell you from my experience that this Council of Spirits was there only without any emotion, only to let me feel what I had felt and experience what I had put out in the world. And it was there were so many times over and over and over again where I chose service to others that I was able to use that as a collateral and show these spirit councils that there's still a chance, that humanity still has a chance to survive. Like, we can still make it. Like, we can, if you just give me another chance. And they agreed, but they told me it wasn't going to be easy and it was going to be difficult. And then I had prerequisites that I had to complete in order to be freed from this life. Otherwise, I'm doomed to reincarnate and repeat it over and over again infinitely. So I said, all right, I'm going to do it. And when I came to, I woke up and I had tubes in my nose. I had 100 stitches down my head. I was pretty messed up for a while. And I never forgot what I was supposed to do. I remember what I was supposed to do. So here I was in a hospital room, tubes and shit and all over, and I had to I was doing fundraising. I'm like, hey, listen, we still got to go do these people to Dubai. We still got to do all this stuff. I'm still doing calls. I'm like doing all the things. Everybody's telling me don't do it. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I came back to do this. What are you talking about, man? This is wild. And so, 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I was on a plane and I was going to Dubai. A medicine man had came to me and told me I needed to stop taking all of the pain medications that I was taking and feel the pain full on for what it was. It was my body healing. And if I could, in my mind, take that negative pain, that horrible, awful sensation that was surrounding my physical being completely, and switch it in my mind from recognizing it as being a joyful, celebratory thing, because that pain I was experiencing was life and that I was healing. And if you could think of it, that pain as a joyful sensation, that I could shift in my mind to become the warrior that the world needs. And I'm looking at this dude with I'm on morphine, I'm on a lot, I got stuff going on. And he's like, stop taking the pain meds. But I listened to him, and I slowly started weaning off the medication and doing everything he said. And it was, these horrible tubes that were trapped in my abdomen became like a sore tooth or something, where it just became very, very minuscule for me. And, that really helped me to deal with all this stuff, especially getting on a plane, not taking any medication in a country that would send you to prison for taking a Vicodin, so it was very helpful. But this is how we continue to go. So now here, that was back in Dubai. After Dubai, we went to Azerbaijan, and we just came back from COP30, which was in Belém, Brazil. Belém, Brazil this year was very, very important because we have been bringing together all of our wisdom keepers, and we've been working to co-create contemporary climate policy that we advance underneath the umbrella of the UNFCCC that responds to the negotiating tracks of the climate accords. And I know that's a mouthful, but basically we have to be aware of what's taking place internationally in order to respond to it so that we can implement our own domestic needs. And for those of us who are in the United States, it's embarrassing because our government isn't even active in the process anymore. And that multilateral decision-making process is beginning to fail and unravel. And one of the most beautiful things about the way that we work is that it's not American-centered. We have our American desires needed, in our domestic perspectives are included within these international demands. And so as we work as a global collective, we're able to still speak truth to power. We're still being able to see that this is what the world needs together. And that we are stepping outside of just doing international climate policy. For the next 3 years, we're actually creating climate hubs that will basically be able to take this high-level international climate demands and convert it into usable templates that people can utilize for climate adaptation and mitigation that uses traditional ecological knowledge from the global perspective of indigenous communities that have survived for thousands and thousands of years. And that we're going to be still continuing to do our advocacy in the halls of the UNFCCC, the IBN, and the CBN, but we are still going to be making our climate hubs into real practical things that people can utilize and adapt, specifically starting with climate adaptation and mitigation for agricultural needs and for extreme weather events that will prevent us from growing food in the future with the impending climate collapse. I know that's It seems scary, but we have to prepare for what's taking place. As the multilateral system fails us and we have fascists who are in the White House, we have to prepare ourselves for what is on its way. And this isn't supposed to be a fear-based thing, like everybody panic and freak out. Like, no, we know what's coming and we still have time to adapt what's going to take place. And more importantly, that we have the ability to mitigate what's impending, what's coming. We have all of the capabilities within our hands now in order to force these systems of power to accede to the demands of the climate crisis. And we have to do it in a multitude of different ways. Yes, in the halls of power, yes, in the streets, and yes to adaptation and climate mitigation plans that will help different regions to safeguard humanity and help us to survive for past fascist overlords who are in the White House. So here I'm gonna share this other one. I wanted to show you guys. I didn't want to bring too much in because it's a lot and I'm working on all of the footage, but I wanted to share you a little bit about what happened with COP30. So this COP30 was really, really important for us. It was the indigenous COP. We came in and we supported a lot of people. We brought 25 people into country and we were doing wonderful things in Brazil.
You know, in the U.S., we have a big movement for land back, giving the land back and returning the land to the original stewards of that place. It's always this possessive colonial mentality of possession, when the truth is that we are a part of the land and it's our responsibility to protect it. And we must return the land so that it will be protected for future generations, not for ownership, not for exploitation, but for protection so that the species can return and ecosystems can heal and that the earth has a fighting chance for future generations. I think returning back to traditional teachings is important. You know, understanding that we are, in fact, an embodiment of the planetary consciousness and we are not separate from our own mother. Just like we're not separate from our own families in society, that we are actually a part of the planetary consciousness and we are an extension of each other. And with that knowledge, we cannot hurt ourselves. We don't want to rob from ourselves. We don't extract from ourselves. We don't exploit from ourselves. We want to protect ourselves. We want to protect each other. And so we have to understand that we return back to this concept that we are not separate from the animals or separate from anything, but are actually a piece of that, and that it's our responsibility as human beings, whether it's spiritually or morally, to protect the planet. And to, more importantly, not just protect it and stop pollution, but to heal and rebalance ecosystems so that the future can have a livable chance. I was just one voice in a sea of noise. And, you know, when I realized the power of finding people that are in the same frequency and in alignment with you, when we are speaking the same words out of different voices and in different people, it becomes a chorus. And that chorus becomes this beautiful, beautiful grouping of humanity that we can sing as a choir into the future and broadcast and draw forth that which we truly desire. And it's important for us to find that frequency and find ourselves and other people who might speak a different language or look differently, but understand that we come together in these spaces so that we can really speak truth into the future and create a life for our children. So this is my 5th COP, and you know, I keep showing up to this COP because this is where the world's leaders come to decide the fate of humanity. There's a lot of international climate finance discussions that are taking place. And indigenous people who are often at the forefront of extractive industries and pollution often are unheard by their own governments. And so what we are advocating for is for indigenous people to be able to go as themselves beyond their colonial power to international spaces where we can receive climate finance that will help us to adapt and mitigate. And not just, you know, my community, but the global community and those who are often at the forefront. As American citizens, when our government was active in the UNFCCC process, their decisions, yes or no, on something that wouldn't have any effect on American society whatsoever, had massive implications for people in the global South. And we have to stand in solidarity together with our siblings who are in the global South. The ecosystems around the equatorial regions that will become inhospitable for humanity and for a multitude of species on the planet. And we have to understand that small steps by one individual country will not save the entire planet, that it has to be a giant quantum leap into the future together. And we can't do that in our own siloed fascist states. We have to step outside of these oppressive systems and find community globally so that we can advocate for the same thing throughout all of the languages in these international spaces and really, you know, stand in solidarity with the just, healthy, livable future.
One of the things that really stuck out for me this year that I take a lot of pride in was that we had stepped outside of just being policy advocates. We were able to stand in solidarity with our siblings who are actually in country, who are Brazilian and are fighting for their own right in history. And one of the main things that really stuck out for us this year was this call for Indigenous people to participate. This year was one of the only years in the past since Glasgow that we've been in a country where there is free speech. And so, Brazil has the right to protest, and we were able to participate, right? So we ended up finding money to re-grant to our relatives down in the Amazon, and they were able to bring up 100 of their relatives. Our brother, Chief Ninua, through the Earthrise Collective, we sat with, and you might have seen it in that South African video, he's the chief of the Huniquin tribe, which is down in Belém. It's in Acre, Brazil. But they brought their delegation along with 5 other tribes, and including one tribe that was undocumented, that uncontacted. They came out of the heart of the Amazon to speak to the world about the atrocities that are taking place where there are no media. And we were so grateful to be able to send $30,000 to our relatives to bring them up and to have them speak for the heart and the lungs of the planet. And it was a really big shift from us, from being just climate activists and wisdom keepers or whatever it is that whoever we identify as, but find as community within each other, and more importantly, to stand in solidarity and to be in ceremony for the group doing well. We need everybody needs to win. And I think as we become well, as soon as we start to realize our privilege, right? And I know a lot of us don't see that, but when we start to travel internationally and we see how other people in different countries handle money and all of these things, we really start to see our own privilege as American citizens. And we are in a first world country. And being able to utilize our privilege in ways that helps benefit people who are less fortunate, that are still in alignment frequency, is very, very important. Once we were able to send money to our relatives, 100 of them came up from the heart of the Amazon. And I know it seems like a number that's just conceptual. 100, yeah, that sounds good. But we had to feed everybody. Right? We invited everyone out. We brought our relatives from Maui to come out, and we did a ceremonial canoe paddle up the river to meet our relatives and do protocol. One of the main things that's important for Indigenous people when we come into new territory is to do our traditional protocols. Like, we're coming in a good way with our local relatives, and they were able to meet us. So our relatives from Maui arranged for some Hawaiian outrigger canoes for us to paddle up the river and ask permission to come into this territory to do the most important work at the UN COP. Okay. Sorry, that was the wrong one. I'm not technologically inclined today. Okay, here it is. Share.
We are here with the A Wisdom Keepers Delegation ahead of COP. We know as Indigenous people that when we enter into other people's territory, we must come in a good way. And so we have brought our relatives from Maui to lead us on a ceremonial canoe paddle up the river here so that we can greet our relatives, the Huniquin, who we've helped to come up from the heart of the Amazon. We are standing in solidarity with our sisters and our brothers who are defending the planet, defending the lungs of the earth. And we know that we will only have each other if we want to move forward into a new consciousness. That we must find others who are of the same frequency and of the same vibration, who can come together in ceremonial ways and broadcast new energy that is meant to be received by those who will help us elevate and evolve as humanity. And we know that we must come into this territory and ask for permission from the original caretakers of this land. And so this morning, as we wake up before sunrise, we're going to be jumping into these canoes, these Hawaiian va'as, and we are going to paddle up this river, which is the cousin of the Amazon, and ask for permission from our relatives, the Huniquin, who will gather on the shores and welcome us into this territory. We must do this before we enter into this much important work at the UN COP. As we work together to advance contemporary climate policy that highlights all of Indigenous people's needs globally, including our own domestic perspectives. The only way for us to move forward together is to stand in solidarity, and not conceptually, but physically, financially, and spiritually.
Falando essas palavras para vocês, porque meu avô e minha avó morreu com 130 anos, outro morreu com 190 anos, nunca tiveram oportunidade de estar falando isso para o mundo. Então hoje eu me sinto honrado e por isso que eu vou deixar essa música aqui para o mundo, que se sinta que lutamos juntos por esse espírito que vivemos. Essa música se chama O Fruto da Semente Está Nascendo. E por isso estamos aqui. House, 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 house.
So as we look at the next year, sorry, there's still some other stuff going on. But I just wanted to say that as we look at the next 3 years, that we are going to be building out our collective a little bit further. We're stepping away from more of the multilateral stuff into hosting our own events that are mainly focused on adaptation and mitigation and spiritual implications for this moment in time. We're planning on doing our 3 years gathering. First one this year is in Switzerland, Mexico, and then India, where we're bringing together 144 wisdom keepers from around the world. We're working in coalition with a bunch of our other organizations, our sibling organizations globally. But this idea of us being able to draw forth more and more wisdom keepers to contribute to sharing traditional knowledge that will hopefully be utilized by people who are focused on adaptation and mitigation globally will be able to be receptive to all of this. We're planning on creating our climate hubs. We have one here in Eastern Washington State where I'm at right now. We also have one operational in South Africa, India, and Mexico. I'm sorry, Ecuador. So we are planning on creating our climate hubs in 8 different bioregions around the planet for the next 3 years. They will basically be able to take these high-level dialogues and these demands for these international spaces and condense them down into adaptable, realistic applications for people in different regions to prepare them for the impending climate collapse that is 100% on its way. It's a big lift for us to be able to focus on like how we can share this knowledge in real tangible ways and still be in alignment with the international demands that are necessary for us to evolve planetarily. So that was basically a little gist of what I was. I didn't want to take up too much time and do other things, but maybe we can now just open it up for a little bit of Q&A if we've got some time or some questions. Keith, maybe I can lean on you to take it from here.
Sure, and I just want to say I think we're running at 11:18, and we've got 12 minutes left of build time, but we have a half hour of buffer time between this and the next session, and I just want to kind of turn it over to you, Jacob, around what time you'd like us to. We can obviously end sharply at 11:30, but I just want to see if you're open to staying around a little longer, or if we should cap it at that time, and then we'll turn it out to breakout rooms for folks to continue the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open. I've got some time. This is my only thing. I have to take my daughter to a birthday party later. That's the only thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Well, we won't want to keep you from that. So you can tell us. All right, you guys. But yeah, we'll take some questions now, everybody. The chat is closed to a discussion at this point because we want to kind of keep things oriented in the kind of verbal space here. If you do want to send a question to one of the hosts, you're welcome to do that. And that includes Jacob, myself, and the rest of the staff team here. But yeah, let's take some raised hands for any questions you're bringing to this space. Chaplain Carl, do you want to kick us off?
I wish I had done a better job of straightening myself out, but Jacob, I have to candidly admit that I was prepared to be disappointed with your presentation because I wanted to love it, and instead it was more awesome than I could possibly have imagined, and so hopeful and visionary and rooted in spirit. I'm really grateful. I'm a climate activist and have been for a long time, and you are one of the first people I've heard be frank about the fact that we are at the wall or we are already at overshoot. And since we can't time travel except spiritually, we did that this morning, thank you. What is the strategy that we should be focused on around when we are?
I'm sorry, around when we are?
When we are, that we are at this point in linear time where we probably passed the 2.5 degrees, or things are going to unravel. How do we and we're at 8.5 billion people, and I'm just wondering what I should put my shoulder to.
So I can lean a little bit more into prophecy and tradition. That from my own tradition, when we were first brought here to this plane of existence, this fourth world, that we were brought here, and the first chief who came to this planet met with Masao, who is the spirit of the underworld, spirit of the earth, the guardian of the earth. And he explained to the Perry chief everything that was going to happen on this plane of existence. And they didn't have a written language, so they wrote it down on this rock and sandstone, and they call it the time rock. And it was basically lays out the timeline, the linear timeline of this world, this fourth world that we all are in. And there's one path, and there's two paths that take place. And one goes up, and it's all kinds of different stuff. And this is the path of technology, of ease, of all of the things that are artificial and not organically made from the earth. And then there's another path that goes on forever. And this other path isn't the path of technology. It's the path of eating what you plant and preparing for 7 years and following the traditional way of living. And then this path goes on forever. And so if you are able to plant your own food and grow your own food, it really helps you to solidify. This is the understanding and the technology that not only my tradition, but many traditions throughout North and South America have sustained themselves through. And that the ability to prepare for extreme weather events that will make it almost impossible to grow food is really, really important. And specifically, like modifying your genetic stocks of crops to be acclimated to your region. A lot of the seed stocks and the genetic modification the genetic seed stocks that we are using are like traditional dry farming seeds and heirloom seeds that will be utilized, that have been utilized in different parts of the world. But it's really important for us now to start to adapt those seeds to our specific climate. So being able to plant some food in the ground and get the seeds going. That's a really big lift for us. As we start to look at these extreme weather events and how are we going to grow food if the weather differences are 12 degrees between each day? And we're seeing that now. We've hit 1.5 degrees in global temperature rise last summer. And that's like a scary thing. We're being blindsided by all of the pedophile wars and all of the other things that are happening. That none of that matters if we're not able to eat food and prepare ourselves. And there's a lot of spiritual things that are associated also with growing your plants and growing your crops. But ultimately, being able to plant food in the ground for yourself is where it's going to be. That's the best thing that we can do and offer. And from all of the teachers from around the world is that we prepare ourselves in land and we prepare ourselves in growth. And that's what I would offer as an immediate response to your question. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Jacob. Yeah, I think we've got one from Andrea here.
Hi, Jacob. I just want to say that I'm really sorry that you were shot in Rio Arriba County in Espanola. I am transitioning from living in Austin, Texas, to a place in Abiquiu, New Mexico. So I feel very strongly about that land, and I understand the whole hierarchy of the Spanish conquistador, the European white, like myself, and then the indigenous people. And I'm very interested in going there and working with the indigenous wisdom. I appreciate you showing up and sharing that, because I think as a white European colonizer, this is the best thing I can do, is to listen to what wisdom keepers, indigenous people have to say. And I love this land, and one of the things that I want to do when I go there is there's so many pueblos, there's so many indigenous tribes and groups there to learn from and to visit the sites and to just talk with the people. I'm an artist, and to share creation, and weaving is really big in that area. And I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate what you did say about growing things. I've always done that. So I will be looking for how to grow in that region where we don't get a lot of water, where we have to capture our water, because even my well is filled with arsenic and heavy metals and salts, and I can't grow from my well. So it's the rain that I have to capture, and learning what grows there. And I would also like to know how I can, beyond that, because I'm not there yet, I'm not on that land, what can we do for the organizations that you work with? I realize money is a great way, but what else can we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think advocating in your local areas for things that are in alignment with the policy demands is really, really important. One of the things that we are working on down the line is to create ways to templates for regional and local governments and smaller governments to succeed to the demands of these larger international policy asks, and trying to find ways that we can sort of bridge those gaps from the micro to the macro. And so, as things start to evolve, that we'll have like a bunch of toolkits that we'll be able to put out. And you can also just you can derive it from the policy as well, the policy platform. but being able to find ways that we can take these international demands and bring them into our own backyard. That's like a big lift for us. When you're out there and you're advocating for, I mean, if you are advocating, feel free to do so. You know, like if people are, if there's a horrible AI center coming down to suck up all of your water, say no. Like stand up. If there's a fracking going on, stop that. Like the idea of us being able to be in alignment frequency will invite that same frequency to become more apparent. And I think that the more that you take courage in your own life and like listening to your heart, and despite what anybody else is saying, if you feel it to be true and you feel that it is important, like feel free to like listen to your heart and move forward. And there's nothing wrong with there's no shame in being wrong either, too, right? Like there's no wrong answers. I like to say that often. A lot of times people ask me questions and it's like, well, there's actually no wrong answer. Well, what do I do with this? It's up to you. Like, you know what I mean? And this idea is so beneficial. You know, I think that being able to be in alignment with other people who are of the same frequency, you will find those who resonate with you. And you know, I think that place, Abiquiu is a unique place, but I like that area up there. The dry farming techniques is something that we do in Hopi land, where we don't have running water, we don't have rivers, we don't have wells, but we are farmers. And so there's a lot of things that are associated with being able to plant food and talking to your plants as if they were conscious and being able to work with them and give them encouragement. And there's a lot of other things that overlap to really bring up the vibration of those things and allow the plants to grow, and more importantly, to help you to bring down to more of an earthly level. So I would recommend that. We have a dry farming thing that is going to be coming out this week, so it's pretty cool stuff. I can also send off to this group our pamphlets that basically will show like how the dry farming techniques for specific heirloom stocks of corn, beans, squash, and sunflowers.
Thank you, Jacob, for that. I think we do have a lot of folks out in the American West or the west of Turtle Island.
Yes, please send us your resources to Keith, and then Keith can send them to us. I really appreciate that. I've always been a farmer, so wherever I am, so I appreciate that.
I want to turn it off to another woman with her fingers in the soil. Sister.
Hello, I'm Sister Confianza. I live in Honduras. I'm originally from the United States, and I probably don't have a question anymore because you've been answering them. But first of all, thank you, muchas gracias, for all that you have shared in this time. And that importance of connecting spiritually with ourselves, with the earth, with each other. And again, having our hands in the earth. So thank you to you and to the organizations you're working with. I'm so glad to hear someone else advocating, you know, just growing food, and those hubs you're talking about of figuring out the practical ways that we can go forward and continue to live on as a part of this beautiful planet. And I guess the question I had, but I think you've been answering, is as white people, I'm a white person among mostly non-whites of indigenous and Afro-Indigenous communities, and you know, what are good ways, and you're already saying, for me, for us to be a part of this, to be active, and not be those conquistadores again, or continuing as some are. Thank you again, Jacob, and to QEW for hosting this.
You know, I touching on, and thank you for your comments. I appreciate your words. I'm thinking about like one of the things that we do, right? Like as a wisdom keeper, so we go into other people's territory. Right? We go into we go places and we do this stuff, and we don't want to go in and tell people what to do or, you know, whatever. What we want to do is make sure that we're supporting the local people. And as an outsider who comes in as a foreigner into different communities, like we want to make sure that we're listening to the people that are in there. What are their fights, and how can we support those people? How can we link what our passion is with their passion and understand that they're not alone? I mean, that's a big thing, I think, for outside people, is to reassure others that they are part of their community. And, you know, whenever we start to see these separations between race or sex or whatever it is, you know, that we're separating ourselves, and being able to reaffirm our own community and who we define as being a part of that community helps to solidify the substance and direction of where we're going. So we're not coming in as like carpetbaggers telling people, you know, all that other stuff. That we're coming in as actual supportive people who are there to build on the community that we already see in our minds. And that's like a different separation between like coming in and being like, you know, having a white savior complex or something along those lines that a lot of people who are doing good things in the world have. And I know a lot of white people who go to different countries and they feel like they're, you know, they got this white savior complex, when truly they're going just to give because giving needs to be given. And that's where I come from, because I go into a lot of different indigenous communities all the time. And, you know, I don't want to tell them, hey, all these other things, but like listen to them, like what is happening here in your area, and how can I support this movement, this positivity, whatever it may be. And ultimately, what separates me from supporting things that aren't good is like, what's the end goal? How is this going to help? You know, what's the most beneficial? Is the end goal obtainable? Is this realistic? You know, and things along those lines. And so I would extend the opportunity to expand your community and invite these people in as being your siblings, you know, your sisters or your brothers, and saying, hey, how can I support you as an outsider? Because I'm passionate and I know that you're passionate, and I'm just coming in a good way.
I'll just add to that I think, you know, Jacob and I, as we've been having these conversations, the amount of time that Jacob has just kind of asked me, like, what do you guys need? What do you guys, you know, Jacob didn't, you know, we're a group that's more white than many others. But Jacob, I think you embody that starting with curiosity in just about everything you do, and it's beneath your words. I want to turn it over to Nancy.
I think she needs to unmute.
Yeah, I actually, you disappeared from my screen, Nancy.
Okay.
Okay, there you are.
I first of all want to thank you, Keith, for bringing Jacob here. And Jacob, I need to say that towards the end of your talk, I was sobbing so hard in grief and in gratitude. You have indeed brought so much wisdom and so much hope. And I just now found myself thinking, I have spent my entire life grappling with these questions and struggling from a very young child. How can we make a world that works, a livable future? And appreciating at this moment, thanks to you, this isn't this question of when this world fails, which it must. Hope, my biggest hope is we will lose the ability to destroy the earth before we destroy it. And that means this will collapse. But then what? As if we were starting from scratch, and just really appreciating, no, we're not. We're falling back into the history of humanity. We know how to live with this earth. We are this earth. Everything you said was just so precious to me. That said, I am a supportive part of something that we created 4 years ago called the Equatorial Voices Network, which is based primarily in the Great Lakes area of Africa, and particularly Uganda and Kenya. And it's local climate activists supporting each other, learning across their different countries who are at war with each other, sharing and learning from each other. That's their first purpose. And the second one that I am particularly focused on is helping teach the global north how to live and how to live with each other and how to live with them and learn from them. And we have a very strong other part of the Equatorial Voices Network in India. And we're working more and more closely with QEW and especially with something called the Permagardens Foundation, which is working with just pulling together the deepest knowledge of adaptation and resilience and resistance to the takeover in those countries of the whole mindset of the global north, that, and shifting the food supplies and stuff, shifting back, and then helping the global north learn from them. So I'm wondering, I didn't hear you mention this anyhow, whether that might be another of the global hubs, the climate hubs you're talking about, and looking maybe to partner with you in that. And for myself personally, my particular area is history and policy making, and policy making that supports, learns from, and supports this kind of work. So I'm hoping there'll be more opportunities to know and work with you. But if I never, ever have another opportunity, you have literally changed my life today. So thank you, and bless you, and bless this work so much. And I believe, I totally have faith that you indeed, you and all you're connected with, have the power to fulfill that mission you came back to life to complete.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm a little overwhelmed. Thank you for your words. That's really, really, one of the things I think that is uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially if we're brought up in like Abrahamic religions, is this idea of apocalypse, right? This idea that the end of the world is coming, that the four horsemen are here, and then that's it, and it's forever, and then eternity, then it's Judgment Day, right? This idea that it will end, and we've all been programmed through media and all of the religious endeavors that the end is coming, right? The end is now. But I think from us especially from my tradition, is that this is the fourth world that has been destroyed and rebuilt, and that what we're doing is not focused on the destruction, but focused on the creation of what comes next. How do we shift our fear-based reality? How do I shift this paradigm of panic and worry and fascism and pedophiles? How do we and the truth is that we have to focus on what comes next. No system built by a global network of child sex traffickers will ever secede. You all understand. I don't want to get off. I just feel like I'm going off on a tangent here. But the truth is that we are focused on creation, and like, what can we do now? Like, how can we counteract this fear-based narrative and focus on creating something that will outlast any temporary oppression that may be forced down our throats? And that's, I think, something that is really, really important. And I would help you all. And Nancy, you bring it up. Like, how do we focus on, like, well, now what? And I say this all the time. I get bored real quick. So we did this huge thing, and then we're all right. Now what? Let's do something else. Let's figure it out. And that's the idea. Like, there's never an end. Even in the dark room, you will find the light. I think that's one of the things that really stuck out. It's like the light shines the brightest in the darkness, right? Let's focus on that creation process and step away from our attention being only on destruction. And that's, I think, what this group represents, is this thread of consciousness that is built on co-creation and living in peace and harmony.
I just want to build on that really quick with two words, two things from two teachers of mine in their own ways. One of them spoke first here, Carl Magruder, when he, in one of his addresses, I didn't know this at the time when I first listened to it, that the ancient meaning of the word apocalypse didn't mean end times. It meant revelation. And so when we think of the apocalypse, he often said we're living in the trans-apocalyptic, the transition from one world to the next. And what's happening now is it's being revealed. And the second piece comes from another friend and longtime activist, George Lakey, when he says, I can't imagine a time that I'd rather be alive. So both of those things. We have time for, I think, these last two questions, and then I'm going to kind of claim things following that to kind of cap us out. So Bernard, if you'd like to share.
Yes, thank you so much for this presentation. Very, very inspiring and well done. It's a short question. It's information. I used to work for an organization in Canada that funds research and knowledge transfer for actually adaptation and mitigation climate change, and specifically agriculture and related sectors. So it's been a while, but my experience is that a lot of things may happen at the same time. So I just want to make sure they're aware of your existence, and maybe it's already connected, but just in case. So question is what's the name of the organization? Is it True Earthrise that we would know more about the bio or the climate hubs and the bioregional locations, or how can the connections be made?
Yeah, I can follow up with an email with a lot more information to follow up. But the organization that I lead that we founded was A Wisdom Keepers Delegation. And so for the past, so we've been working for the past 4 years as A Wisdom Keepers Delegation, but under a different fiscal sponsorship. We had to hire a lawyer, get a nonprofit, and do all that stuff last year. So we are our own 501c3 in the U.S. called A Wisdom Keepers Delegation. I'll send a follow-up email up, and you can I'll set off my email and contact information too with y'all if you want to follow up with any of this stuff. But you feel free to follow our social media content, our social media Instagram. We also have some documentaries coming out. We got all kinds of stuff going on. It's just, if you wanted to connect for the climate hubs, we just launched our Eastern Washington one, and so then we're focusing on different places. If folks would like to sign up, there is a sign-up sheet that we just sent out earlier today, and I can forward that along with everyone else too. We have we're focusing on adaptation and mitigation and genetically modifying the seeds so that we can create a food bank that will be utilized for other places. Ideally, what we would want originally, what we were going to do is to take a large chunk of money and purchase land and then use that land as a teaching center. But I ended up giving up all the money away last year instead so that we could do this work internationally. And that we have plenty of space spread out through a multitude of people's backyards and fields and balconies. And then so we're working within this, both the urban and rural and anything in between, to make sure that everybody is in alignment. So I mean, this idea is basically a template that can be reduplicated in any setting, whether it's rural, regional, or rural or urban. So I can follow up with more information about like what that looks like, and then I can also send off informational brochure of Hopi dry farming techniques. But please keep in mind that it's geared towards Eastern Washington, but. Yeah, we could definitely follow through with all of these things. I can also send off some videos that are more longer than the short ones that we showed today. They're probably like.
Well, I think we'll definitely share everything that Jacob's gonna share with us out with you all following this call, along with the recording and all of those different pieces. But yeah, maybe when this Soul Contract documentary drops on the big screen, we can all do a watch party. We can be there with you in that way. Yeah, absolutely. We have another person with some roots in Eastern Washington to add our final question.
Well, you took away my first line, but that's okay. I'm so excited. Well, Keith knows this. I'm Sue Ellen. I'm now in Vegas because that's where my little grandbabies are. But I was raised in Eastern Washington, 80 miles south of Spokane, Whitman County wheat fields. And so just hello. And I want to say what you talked about exceeded my expectations. And I deal with a lot of despair. And you help me feel hope. But I hate this is the last one. I may have too tough a question, which is, friend Carl really said a couple of things over the last 2 days that have hit me. And one is, what do I put? and you talked about
I
grow
missed
food.
that at least. I don't know if others did, so. And you said, what is something? And then it cut
What
off.
do I put my shoulder to?
Okay.
You know. And I loved your answer. And you said it a different way from the way I've heard it. I loved it. But how do we apply that in a world of 8 billion people where many of those people are highly concrete, living in concrete, urbanized?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not expecting you to have a whole answer to that. But what I am praying is that you and the rest of us can look for an answer in that. This is kind of what friend Carl said yesterday. We are in a world of 8 billion people. It's, it is the truth too. And as we know, a lot of those are in huge concrete cities. How do we apply all of what you've shared, but certainly the growing food to that? And I'm not saying you have an answer, but please help us find an answer.
So one of the things that we are focused on is answering that question. Our template right now isn't located in like a central place, that it's just a template that can be utilized by volunteers. And our volunteers have a wide variety of ways to grow, and it's meant for urban settings. So whether it's a small plot of land in their yard or on their patio or on their balcony or in a closet. There's a lot of different opportunities. One of the main reasons that we're doing this template stuff is geared towards dry farming. I'm from Arizona, where there isn't any, and we rely on a very small amount of rainfall in order to grow these crops. So the genetic stock has been adapted over thousands of years to work off of zero water, basically. And we want to make sure that we can do that here too, and if it worked here and it's successful, you just have to find the right way to do it. But there's also ways for everybody to do it. If they even with growing stuff in solo cups on the balcony and doing things like that. There's a lot of different ways for people to adapt, but we don't know yet. And the only way for us to know is to experiment and to try it out and do test runs. And so that's what we're planning on doing this month. We actually just sent a bunch out. So we have specific Hopi heirloom blue corn seeds that are meant for dry climate, and then the tepary beans, which are a hohokam ancient bean down in Arizona that basically will thrive with zero water and 110-degree weather, and all these wonderful things, and squash and these sunflowers and different things that will help to mitigate. And so this is just a way for us to transfer this knowledge out for anybody to utilize it. And the way people utilize it, we're hoping to document so that they can reduplicate that in different templates for different regions around the planet. So I would love to stay in contact with anybody who is interested in this work. We'll have
yes.
We've got a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes I nerd out a lot because I'm just sitting here like doing all the things.
Yeah.
And I have some family contacts with land in Eastern Washington. You and I need to talk.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Maybe. I don't know what they say. Bless you, all of you.
Well, I just want to, I'll cap this out here. First of all, a huge thank you to you, Jacob, for being here with us. I hope that, I think one of my hopes was in welcoming you into this space. You were just saying, one of our traditions and between Indigenous peoples is welcoming one another in a good way. And I'm hoping that in our own, across the light waves that are transmitting from your device to ours as we're all speaking here, we've done that to hold you in this space. And I know that your ministry here has spoken to so many of us. So thank you. First of all, thank you. Secondly, I'd love to make that thank you tangible. And we've already talked about honorariums, of course, and all of that. But what I'm trying to say there is, I would love if folks want to contribute to Jacob's work. We're going to send out an email following this on how to do that. And if you want to contribute to this Indigenous voice at the United Nations, I know, Jacob, are you going to be there at the Colombian negotiations, the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty?
I'm not. I'm done traveling for a bit. I promised my family I wasn't going to go anywhere. So we do have some folks that are in the area that will probably go. So we're going to send delegates, but personally, I'm not.
So I just want to kind of quickly just introduce everybody that, QEW signed up to be a virtual observer of this, but the first ever conference of countries around the world that actually want to do something about climate change rather than want to fight tooth and nail towards anything, are getting together in Colombia at the end of this month to talk about how to end fossil fuels internationally across all of these countries. And Jacob, we love obviously to support any work you guys are doing or your sisters or brothers are doing there.
Would you say the name of the event, please, Keith? Thank you.
Yeah, I believe it's the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty and first conference in Colombia. If you type those things in to Google, you'll get the exact name. I don't know if you got it, Jacob, right off the top of your head.
Perhaps you could send out information on it.
We will.
To all of us.
I'm going to put it into the chat. Y'all can see it. It's actually hosted by the government of Colombia and another country.
And Netherlands, the Netherlands, yeah. So lastly, Quaker Earthcare Witness is going to be where there's three goals that we're focused on. One is changing policy across the country and at the state level, particularly we've got a strong focus on the Make Polluters Pay laws in California, the fourth largest economy of the world, and in New Jersey it's developing, as well as moving we're hoping to move Quaker money, billions of dollars of Quaker money out of the stock market and into the world we seek, the economy we all actually believe in. And thirdly, we're hoping to build this network of Quaker resilience hubs around the world. And I think that's the last piece I wanted to just touch in with you on, Jacob, is in about 4 days, we'll be hosting Doug Tallamy, who's a friend and the founder of the Homegrown National Park Network. And first of all, if anyone who's here, please sign up. It would be great to have you there. But secondly, it's all about rewilding and bringing back ecological landscape restoration on Quaker lands around the country and around the world. And so any way we can partner with you, I think that this movement among Quakers to restore our lands, to work with the land, et cetera, is palpable at this time. And we would love your resources and to connect further in any ways we can. So it's just been an absolute delight to be with you. And we hope you have a great time at your daughter's birthday.
Beautiful seeing you all. Thanks so much for your time. Blessings to you all. Remember that you are the earth healing yourself.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jacob.